Welcome to Corner of the Galaxy, the show that talks 100% LA Galaxy soccer. We're glad you could join us. Now it's time to sit back and relax as your hosts navigate through the twisting, turning, but never boring world of the five-time MLS Cup champion, LA Galaxy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman, coming to you on an October 29th, Thursday, October 29th. I was going to say Monday. I don't know what day it is. It's all just sort of blending together. A big day. A little scary day, a little busy day. Some things are happening. LA Galaxy have fired head coach Guillermo Barros Schelotto and his coaching staff. We're going to talk about that, I promise. We have a lot of stuff to talk about with that, so we will not skimp. But we also have to go over the loss to Portland. We got to put this in context. We got to take you through chronologically with Chicharito, with Portland Timbers game, with the press conference last night, and then take you into the announcement. And the LA Galaxy have a game against Real Salt Lake too. Yes, there's still 3 games left in the season. A bunch to get to. Let's just cut straight to it. Helping me out, the Portuguese hammer himself, Eric Vieira. How's it going, buddy?
It's going well. Like you said, these are hectic times, difficult times to be an LA Galaxy fan. But I'm excited that we get to talk about it tonight because usually we have our show, we filibuster for an hour, and then the big news drops the next morning. So the big news dropped this afternoon. So we are ready to talk what's fresh, hot off the press here.
Yeah, I was. I may have at one point texted you. So it broke at 2:30 was when the press release went out. I found out about it at 2:25. So I was really in front of things on this. So I got tipped. I found it's that long lead time to write all those articles that you want to write about it and go out. I got tipped about it, and then basically about the time I got tipped about it, everybody else sort of got tipped, and all of a sudden it was out. And then at 2:30, the press release came out. So everything was very condensed today. It was a very busy day. There was a lot of stuff going on. Just in fact of MLS announcing some weird things today as well in terms of the points per game. We're going to talk about that. So there was a lot of things going on. And I had sort of resigned myself that this wasn't going to happen, Eric, because after the Wednesday night, after last night's debacle in Portland, and after the weird press conference and all that stuff, I was convinced that it was going to happen, this morning if it was going to happen, or it was going to happen at the end of the season, that there just was nothing anybody could do, and they were going to have to sort of do it. So it was just a weird sort of crazy day. I will say this before we get too far in. And I want to let Eric talk eventually. I think he deserves it. So, is that I did talk to LA Galaxy general manager Dennis Kloese about 10 to 15 minutes ago. I was trying to get him on the show, and I understood he's had a busy day, and that things were, and it just, I'm sure he won't mind me sharing this. He said, we'll do it another time for sure. And Dennis has been on the show before, and he's a great guy to talk to, and he'll give it to you straight. But his quote was, it's been a long day, it's been a long week, it's been a long month. And I was like, I think everybody can sort of feel that in it. And it reminded me, that it's a sad day too, in a lot of ways. And I know that we've all been frustrated, and you've watched what has happened, and you've seen the LA Galaxy continue to circle the drain, and it gets worse and worse day after day. I understand that, but that people lost their jobs today, and that there were friends of people within the organization that they've been working with for the 2 years. So, as much as I believe that they did the correct thing, at least the first step of correct things that they needed to do, there's still a little part of me that's like, there's still people in this, and it still sucks. Now, Eric, you pointed out to me, and I think it was one of our friends pointed out that they're also getting paid for this next year. And they don't have to. So they're gonna be okay. I mean, Guillermo and the coaching staff are gonna be okay. But it was just a really sort of rough day, I think, overall, when you're talking to the actual organization. Outside, fans are jumping up and setting things on fire. I don't think anybody's done that. But are excited for the change, because with the change comes hope, right? I mean, that's really what this is, because there's no, Dominic Kinnear is the coach. There's hope now, Eric, but it's not like there's anything definitive has happened.
Yeah, I feel like Dennis Kloese at the press conference there's a lot to to unwrap from what you just said, and the first part being that it is a sad day, and DTK even said in the press conference, he said, first and foremost, this is sad, because we have to get rid of someone. And you're right, I was talking about it with my wife, and she's someone who works in human resources, and she's like, I never want to be in a position like that where you're just there's the constant threat of being fired and then relocated and families relocated and upended. Like, that is not a fun position to be in. But you're right, they are getting paid, and that kind of comes with the territory. It is the job. But you're right, they are people. And when we talk about certain superstars as well, which I'm sure we'll get into, sometimes it's easy to disassociate that they're people and they have families, and it's easy to make jokes. And I'm right there making jokes at the expense, just like everyone else. But at the end of the day, they are people, and it is a bummer. But but I was kind of with you on the camp that firing with 3 games left, what is that going to accomplish? And especially that his twin brothers on the staff, in addition to coaches that he brought over. So it's not like there was a team of assistants that's in place that's going to stick around if he was gone. It's not like Gustavo was going to take over when his brother just got fired. So you knew they were going to clean house. And now they mentioned it that they basically were going to talk with Dom this afternoon and make plans to fill that staff for these final few games. So it seems interesting. Like, are you really going to reload? Technically they're not out of the playoff race, but if we're being real, I mean,
they're out of the playoff race.
With how things went yesterday and the over the weekend, they're pretty much done. It's a dead man walking situation with this team. But so I didn't think it was going to happen, but I think there's only so many embarrassing losses that you can face before you have to make a statement. And whether you say it's his fault or not his fault, we'll get into that a little bit later. But I don't think it was the wrong decision either, because I think an embarrassing loss like that when your job was already in the hot seat. It was the final straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah, it was. All right, let's get to a little. And having said that, now we'll dance all over their graves. As we do the rest of the show.
Now we'll treat them like they're not people. It's what we have to do to make good content.
It's something like that, I'm sure. All right, let's get to the day of the game, because that's really when all of this starts, and it leads up to things, and it throws different things. I don't know. I know that one of everybody's favorite sports writer, Kay Baxter, there is looking at sort of writing a story and saying, and he asked me if the Galaxy were like a soap opera, and I go, yeah, I think that's pretty accurate at this point. It feels like it's this accurate. Maybe it's not a telenovela yet. It hasn't gone to that drama, but it could be if you just give it a little bit of, if you follow any of the Galaxy conspiracy theories, it is a telenovela. Actually, absolutely. Yeah. But right now, it's just probably a boring old soap opera. So it starts the morning of the game on Wednesday morning, and we did a show on Monday. There was no media availability between Monday and Wednesday, so there was no way to check on anybody, and you didn't know the status of Chicharito. You didn't know whether Joe Corona was going to be available. All these things sort of got brought into this, and it was all question marks. And so, what do we get in the morning? But we get a post from Chicharito. We have an Instagram post. All right. Now, the Instagram post basically says, and I'll paraphrase, he said, hey, I'm not going to be able to play in this game tonight because I'm injured, but I'm wishing the LA Galaxy the best, and I hope they get 3 points. That's my paraphrase, because I had to translate it, and then I forgot the translation. So that's the paraphrase of what he said. Okay, that's cool.
I have it if you want it.
Yeah. Well, what is
that direct translation from Instagram? It's a translation from Instagram. So again, Spanish to English isn't exact, but basically what it says: today I get to be out due to injury. So that already tells you that that's a translation thing. Today I get to be out due to injury, but I wish my team can get 3 points and to keep the possibility of qualifying the playoffs alive. Let's go, my LA Galaxy. So again, little myth of the translation, but you get the idea.
Yeah. So now, on the face of it, this is a player who has seemed very disconnected from the team, who doesn't have the LA Galaxy in his profile on Instagram. He doesn't list that he's an LA Galaxy player, who doesn't normally talk about the LA Galaxy or do things that sort of show him in an LA Galaxy uniform, or really try to ingratiate himself with the fan base. And it's a fan base that's pretty ticked off at this point. Seeing all this money wasted in an international spot and a designated player spot, all wasted on a player who has one goal the entire season, who has been injured for large portions of the season, who hasn't played in games this entire season. I still think he's around 40% of the total minutes available he's played. I think that's right around where it was. I did it earlier today. So you have this guy. So, on the face of it, it's, hey, I'm rooting on my team. Here's the problem. The LA Galaxy didn't say he was out. Chicharito said he was out. So for the first time in I don't know how long, Eric, I don't think I've ever seen a player of the LA Galaxy, and I've been doing this since 2009, almost before Instagram. Was it before Instagram in 2009? It feels like it was probably before Instagram, or like borderline.
It was probably around, but it wasn't a thing like it is now. It wasn't a commonplace item. It wasn't part of the zeitgeist, if you will. Maybe it was in development or in the early stages.
So I can't remember a player ever ruling themselves out either on Twitter or on Instagram and saying, "Hey, I'm not going to be there." Before, by the way, the plane had like just taken off. Like whenever you get down to where it was like the plane just took off, and then Chicharito fires off the post like, "Hey, I'm injured, so I can't play in this game." And it's just it was. I think it was in the right place, but it was tone deaf in sort of how that was going to play out. And I will tell you 100% true, the LA Galaxy had no idea this was being tweeted out. They knew he wasn't playing. It wasn't like he was suddenly like, oh, I'm going to play, but no, I'm not. I'm on Instagram saying I'm not playing. They just didn't know he was going to post it. And I have to imagine, and talking to a whole bunch of people are sort of scratching their heads trying to figure him out right now, because he seems like a question mark. He seems like a guy who's not involved. He seems like a guy who keeps this club at arm's length all the time, and this feels like more arm's length. What did you make of it, Eric?
So, first of all, shout out to one of the followers on Instagrams and listener of the show who pointed out, Chicharito never mentions anything about the LA Galaxy. And when he said that, I was like, that's something a lot of fans say, but I'm sure he's mentioned it. And when I went back to look at his profile, one of the only players who doesn't have the Galaxy mentioned that he's a LA Galaxy player. I know that's a silly thing, but it is something that, I have on my Instagram profile that I'm a co-host on Corner of the Galaxy. So much smaller scale. And that's something
it's
that
part
you
of your
claim.
contract, isn't it? It's part of the contract.
You take a little bit of, I am, to your horn, to my horn, something I take a little bit of pride in is being part of this show. So that's one red flag. And then you see the number of times he posted, it wasn't really about the Galaxy. And you're right. I don't think I've ever seen a player rule himself out before a game. You usually see it like with a season-ending injury. I'm at the hospital, I'm okay, wishing my team the best. That's usually the scenario that you see it. So what it says to me is, you said it was tone deaf, but I think it was. I don't know what the right word is. I feel like someone got in his ear, either from the club or his brand manager or life coach or whatever it is, and say, listen, there's a fan base who's very upset with you. They say in all the press conferences, we don't pay attention to what the way people are saying, but of course they know. You see him constantly being mentioned in articles and, fans tagging him and things. And the general consensus is you have a fan base that's pretty upset with his scenario. So I think, especially after El Tráfico, he missed the fourth marquee game of the season, and someone probably got in there and said, listen, these people are not happy with you, and you need to start, trying to ingratiate the fans. And I think that's what that post was giving a heads up, him in a Galaxy uniform, trying to, keep it in touch with the fans and let them know that he's rooting for them and he wants the best. But the only part where I think I'll agree with you where it becomes tone deaf is this was a new revelation. It's now October. He's been with the team since January. It's not like he's been constantly talking about the team, or when he went home from the bubble and he was still injured, that he was posting every single game that they were gone, because that is something you see players do. I think Joe Corona's done it. I think Jonathan Dos Santos has done it. They're not there, so they'll Instagram story of them watching the game at home. That he wasn't doing that. So it was like, now that the fan base has almost completely turned on you, and I'm kind of in that camp where I wanted to give them a chance. Maybe signs were there, but you give them the benefit of the doubt. And now that they've turned, now is when you want to start saying, I'm here for the team. It's all about the team. I want to reach out to the fans, show them that I care about this club. It seems like it's a little bit too little too late. Maybe the train hasn't left the station yet. Maybe he still has a couple more years in the contract and off season to get himself right and to redeem himself here. But I think this is something that, it could have been done a little bit earlier and been the norm. It just doesn't seem like it's the norm. And that's why it's a big red flag, and probably why the Galaxy was surprised, and why a lot of fans called BS on it, really, because it's like, you haven't been saying anything. And then all of a sudden you say something, people see right through that.
I was going to say that there's a lot of people who consider this almost a conspiracy theory of sorts, that this was Chicharito almost trying to get Guillermo Barros Schelotto fired. that this was him not wanting to play and his injury has been him not wanting to play for this bad team and therefore him taking the blame for it. And if that's the case, then the LA Galaxy have one of the giantest problems that they could possibly have, which is a star that thinks that they get to control the way that the club is run. And the last time that happened, it was David Beckham. And I'm sorry, Chicharito, you're no David Beckham. So you don't get to do that if this is the game that maybe he's trying to play. Because, it was David Beckham that went through a coach, and then they brought in Ruud Gullit, and Ruud was horrible. I mean, you're talking about the darkest days of the LA Galaxy, horrific. 2007, 2008. It was horrific. They never practiced set pieces during his time. That's like, and you... Yeah, and it was just, hey, just go play the ball, and then I guess he would go out partying. I think that was one of the charges leveled against him. So I mean, you're talking about the darkest days, and it took somebody like Bruce Arena coming in. Again, we pray at the altar of Bruce Arena, the Bruce that was the 2009 to 2015, 2016 LA Galaxy. Those were the good old days. And by the way, that's where you're at. But yeah, I mean, you eventually, it was funny because Alexi Lawless said on Twitter, somebody said, how do you fix the LA Galaxy? He goes, fire me, hire Bruce Arena, right? Which is what happened after Ruud Gullit left. And then Alexi got fired and they brought in Bruce Arena, right? I mean, that is history. If you know your history, that's why I thought it was hysterical. I was laughing and we were all joking around. But when you look at, what could happen if you allow that. And remember, Eric, a lot of these same charges were leveled against Giovanni Dos Santos, that he was trying to control things and that they brought in Jonathan Dos Santos to try to appease him and do all these things. So for me, that's the danger of this. I don't think it's at that level, but if you allow him to dictate these terms, if he got Guillermo Barros Schelotto fired, which I don't believe is the case, then they're just blow it all up. You might as well just get relegated. Find a way out of the league. I don't know what to say. What do you think, Eric?
Well, this is where I get to put on my tinfoil hat, and this is where we get to have a good time and delve into our conspiracy theories. I do not want to throw accusations and say that a player is faking an injury and saying anything like that. But I will say that if a player was going to do that, all of the circumstances were set up to make it look like that's the case. You had a coach bench their star player. Every time he was asked about this player, he seemed frustrated. The player in question wasn't scoring goals and wasn't looking good, didn't look ready to go. So it very much looked like the player was told he wasn't going to start. And he says, well, if I'm not going to start, then I'm not going to play. Everything looks that way. You're not there. You're not in the training room. It's not open. Like you said, I think you mentioned it on Monday's show. It's not like you can go in training and say, well, he wasn't in training for the week. So because of that, it leads you to believe some of these things. Maybe they're true, maybe they're not true, but there's no way to disprove it. So that's when the conspiracy theories come out. And then so same thing with El Tráfico. It's possible he wasn't on the starting sheet the day before, and he said, you know what, my hamstring doesn't feel like I'm ready to go, and that's a bad sign. So same thing with the Portland game midweek. It didn't seem like when Chicharito was playing like he was favoring his body in any way, like he was carrying an injury. It didn't seem that way when you watched him play. So that's what makes it difficult. Sometimes when you have like Jonathan Dos Santos, when he was first coming back from injury, sometimes those first few plays you could tell he was kind of favoring his leg a little bit and he wasn't necessarily going for every ball at 100%. So you can tell he was kind of harboring an injury. I think Dos Santos looks much better now, but you can tell that in the beginning. But I didn't see those signs with Chicharito, which opens the floodgates with all the conspiracy theories. And you're right, making that post, it could have been a pointed remark like if the club's not going to go out, then I'm going to go out and I'm going to tell you, if you read the tea leaves, what's really going on. I wasn't selected, so I'm going to be out during the injury. I'm still rooting for you, but I wasn't picked to be part of it. It can be viewed that way. I'm not going to make those accusations, but all the cards are out there for you to put those pieces together.
Yeah, if you want to connect those dots, you can make a picture of a unicorn. I mean, it'll come together if you really wanted to. So
it's magic eye. You hold it away from your face, and it suddenly comes into focus.
It's a sailboat. That's what it is.
It's a clipper ship.
That's is that also dating myself? Is that movie dating myself? Yeah. Yeah, it probably is. That's probably dating myself as well. All right, cool. Okay, so now let's get to the game itself. Guillermo Barros Schelotto, clearly on the hot seat, and we've known this, goes up to Portland. It looks like, actually, we know it didn't look like. Dennis Kloese was there. He was in person. I don't know who else was in the stands there, but they kept showing Kloese, and he never looked comfortable the entire time, which how could you be? Because 6 minutes into this game, the LA Galaxy were losing already. It was 3-0 at halftime. They end up losing 5-2. The lineup that Guillermo Barros Schelotto put out. I know what he was trying to do. I get it, Eric. I understood what he was trying to do with this lineup. It's just that when you give a goal up 6 minutes in, anything you were trying to do is now toast, right? And clearly this is one of the most defensive lineups that he has put together for the LA Galaxy. You can see it. Yoni Gonzalez is your striker up top. You had Christian Pavon out on the left. Julian Araujo at the right. You had sort of Jonathan Dos Santos at least listed as the 10. He didn't end up playing there, and we kind of knew that was going to happen. But he was the most offensive central midfielder that they had because you had Carlos Harvey in there who got, I think, his first MLS start in the game, and then you had Perry Kitchen back there. So Harvey is defensive, Kitchen is defensive, and then you had Jonathan Dos Santos who is box-to-box more than anything, but he's more defensive than he is offensive. So you had 3 defensive midfielders. So technically speaking, if you count the 4 defenders, and you had Insua, Depew, Pavon Gonzalez was suspended. You had Dan Steres, and you had Rolf Felcher. If you count that, they had 7 defensive players on the field. Well, 8 if you count Klinsmann as well. 8 players on the field out of your 11 were defensive. I mean, and you can't call Araujo offensive either. There's 9 defensive players on that field. So clearly they were going for we're not going to let you score, and we're going to try to steal one on the road, which is a good MLS trick. I mean, that's a tried and true favorite. And so you look at this and you say, okay, great. That means you can't let people score. And then 6 minutes in, they let somebody score.
Yeah, I think here's where the misstep was for me. You're right. They had 9 quote unquote defensive players. And so it seemed like the move was to be like it was against LAFC, where they held them scoreless for a long time. And it took an out of bounds play and a fluky play to get the first goal, and then eventually kick things off. And they lost that game, but they held their own pretty well.
Still a little salty.
Just a little bit.
I could tell. I could feel it in your voice when you're saying it. It's okay. Continue. Sorry.
I was gonna say, I didn't say I was salty, but if you read between the lines, you can figure it out. That's the theme for today. Okay. But so I could see the logic, but at the same time, the team that held LAFC scoreless and did a great job defensively was with Sasha Kleshin in the lineup, with Sebastian Lletget in the lineup. It was not with Carlos Harvey and Perry Kitchen in there. So that's where he mixed things up. He tried to do the same thing with a different set of players. And, with absolutely no offense to Carlos Harvey, with your job on the line, that's the move you make when you have Sasha Kleshin, who started your games and has the veteran experience when you're on the road, and you have Sebastian Lletget, who's, your second leading scorer, and you leave them on the bench with your job on the line. You that's what you get. You kind of get what you pay for. That's what you put out there. And it was no surprise to me that they went down early, and then it got really messy and ugly. And I don't know where the conversation is going to go, but they've had several embarrassing losses, and this one, the game was over at halftime. You saw the second half where they fought back a little bit and looked like maybe there's going to be something, and then the letdown again. With that 4th goal with Steres getting twisted around, and then it was really over at that point. But it was an embarrassing way to lose, and so you could only have so many embarrassing losses before someone's got to go. And maybe it's GBS's fault, maybe it's not. I think the game yesterday was a poor game plan, and I think that's why his head rolled. It was the last thing, because you can't just keep having these embarrassing losses and saying we're not doing anything. The fans were demanding something, the supporters groups were demanding something needed to happen. We can have the argument later about if other heads need to roll as well in the front office. It shouldn't all fall on the shoulders of Guillermo Barros Schelotto, and I agree with that it's not entirely his fault. There are other people responsible for this, but the fact that he went, it was he wasn't making he wasn't getting a performance out of the team like a coach should. It just didn't seem like the team was playing for him. It seemed like the team quit on him.
Yeah, and it was interesting. Just that whole game was interesting. I mean, you're losing 3-0 at halftime. The penalty kick. I mean, Nick DePuy, I think, has had 3 or 4 handballs this year, and I don't know that I can blame him for any of them. Like, it's just weird where his hands always seem to be in the way, but at the same time, I'm never like, dude, you got to keep your hand down. It's like some of this stuff is reactionary.
Yesterday's was the closest to being truly not in a natural position. I think the way his arm was, I think that's a defender trick where you try to make it look like that's natural, but you're really making yourself bigger and putting your arm out there. I thought that was a fair penalty. I think he purposely had his hand up there just in case it went up. I don't think that one was accidental or as accidental as maybe he claimed it was.
I am never. I was not going to argue with that one. It was not one that I would sit there and go, oh well, It wasn't like in the LAFC game when the ball went out of bounds and then they just kept playing and then they looked at it on V. I don't. No, it's fine.
Overhang. It was the overhang.
Yeah, it was the overhang. It's round. Okay, it's round, guys. The ball is round. I've heard all those arguments for like weeks now. I'm just going to bang my head against the desk. So you get this. You get an LA Galaxy team that's down 3-0 at halftime, and you can go through all the defensive breakdowns and everything that happened. And really, again, this team and the way it was set up to be a defensive team and stop people from scoring. So then, as soon as they got scored on and they needed to score another goal, and they started to break out of there, then the shape goes to crap, which is pretty much a perfect thing that happens to Guillermo Barros Schelotto's teams, right? We've seen this, is that once the game plan is broken, once the game plan is going to work the way that you want it to because you got slapped, you got punched, and now you have to change your game plan, you have to adapt, you have to fight for things, is that the teams can't do it. They can't hold their shape. So you didn't have a shape here. So 3-0 at halftime. LA Galaxy looking like they are just a mess. I mean, as much as you'd love to, say that ESPN with Taylor Twellman and John Champion were like sitting there and just pounding on the LA Galaxy, and it was unfair for them to just keep pounding. At the same time, they were 100% accurate on all of their stuff. Yeah. I'm like, what do you want? How do you want them to stop? It's like somebody should throw the white towel on them because they're just getting bloodied out there.
Yeah, well, it's like everything that's going on right now. I've been pretty active on social media lately, kind of making jokes and bashing the team pretty. I'm pretty out of pocket with some of the things I've been posting lately. But I think that it's fair because that's where we're at. We're in last place. Teams are beating up on you, and so when they go on the broadcast, you can't get upset with Taylor Twellman and John Champion or is John Strong? Did I say the wrong John?
No. It was John. It was John Champion.
Okay.
You're good.
All right. Yeah, I see. I mixed them up. But you can't get mad at them for pointing out the flaws when the teams they're at the bottom of the standings and they let 3 goals in a half. Of course you're. So like the 1 or 2 times a year we go to Big Bear. I have like the one jacket I got on Amazon, but that looked like a quality either Columbia or the North Face. That's Portland, the Portland uniform that he had there. So yeah, I agree with you. He was well dressed for the occasion there.
But at the same time, like he kept trying to like almost hide in the jacket. It was creeping up around his ears, right? Because I don't know if he was cold or if he was trying to hide, and they kept showing him on TV, and it's like his neck got shorter and shorter each time. And you could just see that he knew. I mean, I don't know this. So I wanted to talk to him and really see if we could find out, and we will do that, and hopefully we'll have that here in the next couple of weeks, or we can talk to Dennis. But I don't know. I just feel like there was this thing that he knew he was going to have to do, that this isn't the result that was going to save Guillermo Barros Schelotto. This is the one that was going to break him. And so it's 3-0 at halftime. Guillermo Barros Schelotto goes on with Taylor Twellman and John Champion. So I actually transcribed it. It was interesting. I don't really want to go through it. I'm sure you guys heard it, but it was just, he killed the Chicharito rumor, right? So about going to Chivas on loan or stuff like that. He says he's not going anywhere. He said, I think it's been a very challenging year for everyone, and certainly Javier. We obviously had him come in with high expectations from him, from ourselves, from everybody. We haven't been able to connect these high expectations so far, and there is no truth to any rumors of him going to Chivas or anything else. So that was sort of like, okay, that's not going anything. But then whenever it came to, he was pretty definitive on that one. But whenever it came to talking about Guillermo Barros Schelotto, he says, I think it's a challenging moment to discuss it right now. And beyond even the manager position, the players, my decision, my part is being, first of all, held responsible. And I think we have to take responsibility. We have to evaluate the best we can. Obviously, after a very rough season so far, and I think it's not the time to discuss anything on the manager position on anybody within the organization before we shift the gears and evaluate anything going forward. He was very wishy-washy on what was going on with Guillermo. And you can read between the lines there. Everybody knows Guillermo's on the hot seat. He's not going to come out and say, yeah, we're probably going to fire him in about 45 minutes after this game is because this game is toast. But you could see but that's where he was sort of going. I think the only other takeaway that I get from that is, Eric, what other Galaxy person, front office, could go halftime on ESPN and do it knowing that his team is getting buried? I mean, would you expect that from anybody else within the organization?
No. Dennis has really shown that he's the only one who is out there making the rounds and having the conversation. It happened in the preseason. It happened, through the season, and then with the MLS's back tournament, he's kind of the face of the franchise, and I feel like that's part of the job is. As the general manager and kind of working with the front office there, he's the one who seems to be moving the chess pieces, and he's the one who's taking accountability for it. So, big on him for agreeing to doing that, because I think there are other people who would have said, listen, I know we said we were going to talk at halftime, but right now with the team down, I'm not going to do it. But kudos to him for sticking through it. But you're right. There was something in his demeanor. It just felt like I've used this a bunch of times, but it's dead man walking. He knew what he was getting into. And we had this conversation, prior to hitting record is, how do you have those conversations? Did he have a conversation with Guillermo where he said, listen, you can't have another loss. If there's another loss, we have to let you go. So maybe he knew down 3-0, okay, party's over. I'm going to have to fire this guy tomorrow or tonight or whenever they have those conversations. And you can tell that was probably lingering over his head, that he knew he was going to have that difficult conversation. Because those losses can't keep adding up. So kudos to him for doing it. But you could tell there was a lot on his mind, and him being the face of the franchise right now, that's part of the territory. But he's living up to it, and he's trying to explain as best he can. And I think even in the press conference today, he said it yesterday. He says, you build a relationship, you have these things where you're interacting. I'm sure he was in contact, during training and running into Guillermo and having those conversations, about bringing players in. You develop relationships with these people. These, like you said, these are human beings, and he, someone who maybe he looked at as a workplace friend. You have that friend, that person who sits in the cubicle next to you or who you work with, and you have those conversations with every day, and having to let them go or having to see them get fired, it's tough. And so, maybe that's a good thing about Dennis, is he has empathy, and you could see that in his eyes. I know we're projecting a little bit here, but I think a lot of people saw what we saw.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think I said this, that there's very little in Dennis Kloese's resume so far as a general manager to sit there and say that he has no blame in what has happened to the LA Galaxy during his time. Now, some of these things are a little out of his control. I mean, I think Herculez Gomez blamed him for having to release Giovanni Dos Santos, and I'm like, dude, that ain't Dennis's thing. That was the correct response to that situation. And that was coming into that situation. That was, hey, you're general manager, and this is the situation that we're dealing with. Yeah. I mean,
this is what I'm not sure just walked into.
Here you go. Here's a bad sandwich. You have to eat the sandwich now. It's like, what am I supposed to do with this bad sandwich? It's really hard for me to keep a family show sometimes. I would just like to point out, but yeah. So that's one of the things. But I mean, look at the players that he's brought in, and look at the players, and look at what the team has done under his tenure. So it's not unreasonable to say that Dennis Kloese deserves a whole heap of blame. We did the blame pie. I gave Dennis a lot of the blame. I gave Guillermo more, because in all of the games that I watched Guillermo Barros Schelotto play, or coach, I have yet to see what his style or what his successful style is supposed to be. And so I think that's a problem. I was talking to Jeffrey Carlisle from ESPN, who was on the press conference call with Dennis Kloese today, which we'll talk about. We actually have some stuff for that as well. And he was asking me some questions because he knows I cover the Galaxy. And so he was asking me things. He's like, well, what is Guillermo's style? And I'm like, I don't know. I go, we understand that he likes to have overlapping outside backs. We understand that he likes to press forward. We understand that he is a go for the win type of guy. He's not a guy who draws. I think he has some ridiculously low amount of draws in his entire career with the LA Galaxy, and it's a low number. And you understand that. I mean, he has more losses than wins for the LA Galaxy as well. So you look at that, but where is the style, and where was that? Because it's rare that you ever got to see the LA Galaxy play with really any flair. And when Zlatan was there last year, it was get the ball to Zlatan. That was the style the LA Galaxy were playing, get the ball to Zlatan. So it's not unfair to say that there was not much substance to what Guillermo was doing, but you still have to blame Dennis Kloese because he's part of putting that product on the field. So I think it would be unfair for us not to point out that Dennis Kloese deserves blame for this. But I think that everybody's sort of the belief that Dennis deserves to get another chance at this, deserves to get another manager, and deserves to get another chance. And by the way, Larry Morgan, not on Twitter, just texted me and said 6 draws. So we got Larry the fact checking in the background too. So I knew Larry would help me out. So
he's our own Politico live fact checking with Larry Morgan, not on Twitter. But what I was going to say to your point is that Schelotto, and I think it's funny that after he's been fired now is when the rumors start circulating and people start saying what some of the issues were. And one of the issues or knocks on him is that he wasn't necessarily coaching the team. He was more managing it. So he wasn't giving direction, or the players didn't really have direction on what to do. He'd set the formation and send the players out, but he wouldn't necessarily coach them and give them direction or coach them up, as you would say. So I think that could be just a side effect of coming from Boca Juniors with talented players and, maybe assuming that they know what to do, and maybe the players that he had didn't know, but he didn't explicitly tell them either. So that's where you have the disconnect. And I think this is common when you have people who were star players when they played, and why sometimes star players don't make great coaches is because they assume that everyone knows what the right thing to do is. But there's a whole outside of your DPs, those middle to the bottom of the roster, some of those people, they're great athletes or they have a lot of upside, but they need to be coached up and told what to do. I've been watching that All or Nothing with Jose Mourinho, and he's telling, the players, breaking down film, telling them which blade of grass they need to be sitting at when, a player cuts inside. And so that's maybe overkill on the other side of it. So maybe finding that balance. And I think the one final point that I'll make is maybe there were some signs that we had our blinders on to, is when players talked about coming to play for Guillermo Barros Schelotto, they talked about how they idolize him because he was a player. They idolize him because, he treated them well. No one ever really talked about he made me a better player, or he coached me up, or he put me in a position where he made me better. You didn't hear those quotes from the players. And so looking back in hindsight, it's easy to say now, but when it's pulling the magic eye book back and you say, oh, well, that's right. No one really said he coached us up and made us a better team. They maybe, went on his history and his legend status and the fact that he was successful, maybe in spite of rather than because of. Yeah,
it was a tough ending for all that. So the Galaxy ended up losing 5-2. I point out they did, Christian Pavon had 2 goals in this game. He really did fight in that second half, especially to try to find space and get some goals. When Sasha Kljestan and Sebastian Lletget came in, there was something there. The Galaxy had some momentum for about 15 minutes until the 4th goal was scored, sort of against the run of play. And they had a chance that they all... Yeah,
I was gonna say 17 seconds is when they had the momentum, and then after that point.
Well, I mean, but you had saves from Steve Clark on I think on Sebastian Lletget's header. I think there was a shot by Pavon that got saved as well. I mean, all of a sudden the Galaxy, who couldn't put a shot on goal, were putting shots on goal. And so it was one of those things to watch and say, okay, something's happening here. And if you almost wonder what would have happened. I mean, if Lletget's ball goes into the corner and now it's 3-2. Are the Galaxy suddenly making this 3-3, or does it end the same way? It's a butterfly thing. You're never going to understand that.
But we saw this movie at Dignity Health Sports Park. They'd lose 6-4, or they'd lose 5-3.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. So we've seen this. They would have scored the goals, but eventually the defense was going to fold. Portland just was clinical, just like they were when they came to LA. They were clinical at home as well.
Yeah. So anyway, 5-2 loss there for the LA Galaxy. So now we get to the press conference. Why not? Let's talk about the press conference because that was fun.
You're proud of this.
It's weird, and it wasn't as weird as I thought it was at the time. But now, like, step back, even just less than 24 hours, it's like, wow, that was pretty weird. What happened? I've never had it happen. Actually, I don't believe I've ever had it happen. So all the press conferences are done on Zoom calls right now, and hey, that works because I actually get to be in the media room for these away games, which is kind of cool. I get to talk to people. What you have to understand is that crosstown rivals LAFC were also playing a game that night. They were a half an hour behind the start time of the LA Galaxy. They started at 7:30, and the LA Galaxy started at 7. So most of the people who cover in Los Angeles, cover the LA Galaxy in Los Angeles, cover both teams because the major papers are not going to have two separate soccer writers. How could they ever possibly afford that? So so everybody goes over and covers that, which means that whenever you get to the press conference, that of the regulars, I was certainly, I think, the most tenured person in terms of the person who's been covering the LA Galaxy the longest on the call. So it was there. So I was told that I would pretty much have a chance to ask a whole bunch of questions. So I literally had 4 questions ready for Guillermo Barros Schelotto. Took him a while to come. That is nothing new because over the last 3 or 4 games, it's taken him forever to show up to the press conference. So I was talking with LA Galaxy PR, going back and forth and saying, hey, when's he coming? So he eventually finally comes. And I was given the, hey, you're going to be first. I'll intro you and then you can go. And it's like, great. And so I had my 4 questions. Guillermo sits down. And I hear them talking real quick, and basically they say to Guillermo, hey, you can make your statement, and then we can be done. And I was like, well, that's weird. I wonder what that means. Like, I'm getting ready for my question. So the whole deal. Click. So one of the PR guys, Chris Glidden, the PR guy, introduced me in and says, now we're going to start a press conference with Guillermo Barros Schelotto. First question goes to Josh Guesman. I'm like, great. So I'm rocking and rolling. Here I go. So I asked my first question. So Guillermo sidesteps the question after I'm done, and he gives a statement, basically. And his statement was, and he tried to sort of answer my question without answering it, which was, I don't really want to sit here and try to dissect what happened tonight because it wasn't great, the whole deal. He goes, but, we have 3 games left, and my focus is basically on those 3 games, and we need to get wins, and blah, blah, blah. That was the gist of it. And then he said it in Spanish, and then he got up and he left. And that was the question going, which was, it was good timing on his part because my second question was, what makes you the best person to still be managing the LA Galaxy, knowing that you've had the year that you've had? Which is, I think, a kind way to ask, but it's a question that needed to be asked. So that was my second question. So he dodged that one, which was cool. But it was just weird. And then we got Dan Steres came out and talked, and Perry Kitchen came out and talked, and they were both pretty dejected, as you would imagine, and tried to answer, I think, questions the best they could. And, it's just sort of, you get the feeling that at this point, all hope is lost. I know they both said that the hope is not lost and they can still do it. And with a new coach, Eric, that might be something that could still, there might be some renewed hope for these last 3 games. But it was weird that Guillermo basically was like, I'm done. It almost makes me think that he knew he was getting fired, or that they told him he was getting fired and to go in and have the press conference.
That's exactly why I said that about Dennis Kloese at halftime, possibly knowing what he had to do. It's, reminds me of Star Wars. I know what I have to do. I don't know if I have the strength to do it. So it's, maybe he had those conversations with Guillermo where he said, if you lose, your head's going to have to roll. And maybe Guillermo knew that. And he said, well, if I'm going to get fired, I'm not going to sit here and answer a bunch of questions about what's going to happen next. So I'm just going to give my statement and I'm going to go because I know exactly what's going to happen either tonight or tomorrow. So yeah, looking back in hindsight, that's what it looks like. He already knew. Maybe he wasn't officially told before he got on the call, and maybe that's why he mentioned that he still had to focus on the 3 games. But maybe he knew without explicitly saying it. But you're right. When the other players come out to speak, you feel it. You see, it seems like they're dejected, like they just want the season to be over. It isn't there. And maybe with the new coach, with Dom, we've seen him work a little bit of magic, although it didn't end well. People say, well, Dom was able to turn the team around last time he did it, but it didn't end well when Dom was the interim last time with the decision day thing. So technically with 3 wins, you still have a chance, but realistically with who they have on the schedule, I don't know that those 3 wins are going to come. And the players just look like they're done for the year. I mean, you see it in the press conference every time these players talk. They look defeated, and so that's why a reset needs to happen.
All right, we're going to get to continuing along chronologically. I wanted to get to some other news, and then obviously we can talk about Guillermo Barros Schelotto. Actually, you know what? Let's save the news for after. Let's talk about Guillermo Barros Schelotto. So today at 2:30, we got the press conference, and that Guillermo Barros Schelotto was fired along with his coaching staff. Now, it's interesting. His coaching staff got fired, but Dominic Kinnear, who was part of his coaching staff, stays along. Now, this is we've talked about it, and you just said it. Dominic Kinnear's second time around. It's Dom, here we go again. I thought, and I had talked to some people about this, about the possibility of this happening before, and I've always said, and I've said it on the podcast too, I always thought Dom might tell the Galaxy to shove it, right? Because he's like, hey, you asked me to be the interim last time, and I almost got you into the playoffs. If we would have won the last game, we would have been in the playoffs, right? That type of thing. He goes, and then you said you were going to consider me for the position, and nothing happened. And I didn't get it. And so now I was agreed to be an assistant coach and do the whole thing. By the way, 2-time MLS Cup winner, Dominic Kinnear. This guy is a storied 4th all-time winningest MLS coach, Dominic Kinnear. This is a guy who has the pedigree and the history to be able to run something like the LA Galaxy, and it wouldn't be outside of a range. I know it's not the sexy pick that everybody wants, but you can't say he's not qualified for it. You can't say that, anything. I would take Dave Sarakin if he wanted to come back and coach this team right now. If Dave Sarakin says I'm the coach, I'm like, yeah, Dave, you're the coach. Here you go, coach. And it's the same with Dominic Kinnear. If he wants to coach this team, he should be able to do it. So I didn't know if he would take it because last time he didn't get the job. But as somebody pointed out, it's a pretty big job to be asked to be the interim coach. Yeah. And so maybe this is his last chance at really getting that shot.
Yeah, and I think maybe he will tell the Galaxy to kick rocks in 3 games. But I think we know he's had interviews. I believe it was at Cincinnati. Like you said, he's a well-known MLS quantity. So I think in 3 games he has Real Salt Lake on the schedule. He has Vancouver on the schedule. It's possible that he could use this as a bargaining chip to wherever he wants to interview next and say, listen, I took this Galaxy team who was in last place and had no hope, and I got 2 wins out of their last 3. So that shows you what I'm able to do. So this is it's almost a resume builder for him. So I could see why he'd want to do it as well, as a chance to pad that resume. But I don't think I expect him to be back next season with whatever changes. It seems like he was kept on the staff for this exact purpose, because he was a Siggy hire, correct? Or he came on at the same time.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to remember exactly
or a little bit
how
after.
It happened. Yeah. No, he came on with because he was. Time. Where was he?
I think Siggy and him came as a package deal.
I could have swore that he stayed on with Siggy, and then it was like he was in some sort of transition between Analfo. Like there was a thing there that happened, but you might be right. Okay. They might have come at the same time. I don't 100% remember, but I remember something of the fact where we're like, well, Dom, are you here? Don't you want a head coach job? Like why would you be an assistant for Siggy Schmidt?
It was odd. It was odd to have him as an assistant, and that's why I think when Siggy got let go, it was an easy thing to say, well, he's stepping in. And I think when Guillermo was brought in, if things went sideways, you had the 4th winning MLS manager on the bench, ready to go and waiting. And so he's filling his purpose. He's when the manager gets fired, this is exactly why they kept him on staff. So we'll see. I think that was actually Kevin Baxter's first question is, will Dom get a chance to interview for the job? Which, interesting timing for the first question, but shout out to the Panda there, because you're right. If he's able to turn things around, why not?
Yeah, and by the way, they're saying in the chat room that Siggy asked him to come in, so he was with Siggy on that. Okay. So you were correct. I was wrong. What do you know? I've told this story many times, but Dominic Kinnear holds a very distinct award in my heart for the LA Galaxy coach I've almost hit in the Staples Center parking garage more than once. He just always seems to be around whenever I'm pulling around corners and stuff like that, and he is one of the most wonderful people to talk to about soccer and the knowledge of the game, and he always has time for everybody. I like him, so I'm gonna probably be in his corner for him getting more than just a passing look at this. But even if it's just for the next 3 games, I look forward to those interactions because I think you're going to get an honest assessment of what he sees and how it goes. And I will never forget that when the Galaxy lost that last game. Whenever he was in charge and they missed the playoffs and the whole deal. And I remember, I think I got the first question to Dom that night and I asked him, I go, can you put any of this into perspective that you did so well leading up to this game? And then I know you lost this game, but there has to be some sort of accomplishment that you feel for this. And he's like, man, he goes, you're asking me to try to put things in perspective right now. And we just lost the game to try to get into the playoffs. He goes, I'm just thinking about that. That's the honest answer. And I get it. Yeah. And that's what you can get with Dominic Kinnear. So, having him there now, the coaching staff is gone, so Dom doesn't. And you already pointed it out. We talked about it in the press conference, which we're going to cover next. The press conference part of this is that they don't have a staff for Dominic Kinnear yet. So
They-
if
they
you want to
met
be
this
on Dominic
afternoon.
Kinnear's, yeah, I was going to say. So what you guys don't know is they reached out to Eric and I, and we're going to be on the bench for Dominic
Breaking
Kinnear.
news.
Breaking news. Just wanted to tell you how that was going to go. Eric's going to be the towel guy, and then I'm going to be assistant coach. So it was put in by levels of seniority on the podcast. So
Yeah.
we're I don't think you would even care, would you? Would you care?
No, I'd love to
No.
be the towel guy. You know
Did
how
I-
good my TikToks could be if I could have access to the towels.
It's funny that it reminded me way back in the day, probably in 2010, maybe 2010. I got to be on the stretcher crew for a game. Did I ever tell that story? I've told that story,
No.
right? During a LA
I
Galaxy.
haven't heard it.
Okay, during an LA Galaxy Chivas USA, this was before I was in doing reporting or anything like that. I got contacted and was asked to be on the stretcher crew for a game. I was on the field at, what was it, the Home Depot Center at the time, during an LA Galaxy Chivas USA rivalry game, when somebody got injured, and then they pushed us off on the other side, and we had to walk all the way back around as the game was going on. It was a great time. They should never let people do that aren't trained for that. That's a bad idea.
I think
all right.
Mike Araujo has a similar story, and he'll fact check us because I know he listens. I think in the Rose Bowl days with the Galaxy, he was like a volunteer handing out T-shirts or something, and he got called up to somehow he ended up in the announce booth, and they heard his voice, and then he ended up kind of being the backup announce guy, and then now he's the voice of the Galaxy and the Angels. So kind of you got to be at the right place at the right time.
Yep, it is. It's one of those. It's always fun stuff. All right, let's go. I think we go to the press conference. You want to talk a little bit about the press conference?
I'd love to.
Yeah, I know. And you were on the call there. There were about 78 people at the peak there on this conference call. So I think what we'll do is we have some videos, so we'll start rolling those, and then we'll play the clips, Eric, and you and I can sort of react to those and sort of talk about them. We'll try to keep it short because I got about 7 minutes of Dennis DeClose talking, but I think it's better to use his words than our words on this, and we can just try to fill in any of the blanks. So here we go. Dennis DeClose at his press conference earlier this afternoon, so it was about 3 p.m. Is when the press conference started, talking about the firing of Guillermo Barros Schelotto.
I first wanted to lay out that obviously this is a very sad time and a difficult time also. When Kevin, I'm going to go a little bit beyond your question, but I'll answer your questions right now. In a project that started 2 years ago with Guillermo, with a lot of things that can be seen as positives last year, we haven't been able to capitalize this year. With the goals being set out in the beginning of the year, we ended up a point that this is obviously a very sad day. It doesn't take away responsibility from everybody, nor my responsibility, and that's at least the opening remarks that I wanted to say, Kevin, if you don't mind. In case of Dominic, I think we'll take it step by step, which I think in this year is the most sensitive thing we can do and what we've learned, and let's work as an organization, as a family, and as a group. We'll work together to Sunday's game, and we'll take it step by step before drawing any conclusions on candidacy or how we go forward.
All right, so a little bit of Dennis there, just sort of trying to set the stage for us and everything. That was Kevin Baxter had the first question, then Dennis obviously had an opening statement on that. They should always let those guys just do an opening statement, so that way they don't have to talk around your first question in order to. That's whenever I'm in charge of everything, I will make that happen next time. We'll see what we can do.
As the towel guy, I'll put in a good word for you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. So that's just a little bit of setting it and talking about Dominic Kinnear and whether or not he'd be considered for it, which is an interesting question. I agree with Dennis. It's not the time to figure that out in the offseason. All right, let's go to the next clip that we have.
With the roster freeze and obviously the challenges internationally and nationally to bring in players under quarantine rules, we'd like to focus on the upcoming games, support Dom and everybody around the team, the players, as much as possible, to make it 3 highly positive games and something that our fan base and everybody within the organization can be proud of. And then we'll assess and evaluate any steps forward. And like you said, there's no secret that defensively we haven't been able to perform. But sometimes it's not only on defenders. It depends also on other things and goes into a way of how you style up your team also and prepare tactically.
All right, so Dennis, talking about the defense there, and just asking, we've talked about this, Eric. COVID-19 has put a hamper on what Dennis Kloese and what Guillermo Barros Schelotto wanted to do. They wanted to bring in more players this offseason. It's just one, money, I think, is a question mark right now with AEG, and two, just trying to get the proper paperwork. I mean, you saw how long it took Yoni Gonzalez to get into this. And what is today? It is the 29th. So I believe correctly, the transfer window closed today. That it's dead. Yeah. So transfer window is dead, and the rosters are frozen.
Yeah, we knew no one else was going to come at this point, especially, and I don't know what one player or 2 players you could bring in that's going to fix the mess they're in right now. But I don't think he's made a point of saying this, and everywhere he goes is that with the restrictions of COVID-19 and all this, that's a reason why he hasn't been able to bring maybe the players that they've wanted. But it's also a signal that this team wasn't constructed appropriately at the start of the season. He did have an off season. He did have last season with the opportunity to bring players in during those transfer windows, and very few players were brought in during those windows. So I think the only other pass you might give them is with Alexander Katai. How long ago was that? It feels like 2 years ago.
3 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. That was something out of his hands that, you weren't able to fill someone at that position who maybe could have been a contributor to this team. So maybe that's the one pass you get. But as far as bringing other players in, they had a lot of opportunities to bring players in prior to the pandemic and everything being shut down, and they weren't brought in. So I understand what he's saying. It's difficult to fix the mess now, but I think it wasn't set up great to begin with, and I think that's how you have to count that mark against them.
Yeah, and by the way, John in the chat room says that did other MLS teams have much transfer window move? It wasn't super busy this summer.
Not much.
And to sort of counter your point is the summer really is in the global game. The summer is when players move, right? And the winter is sort of the secondary transfer window. It's flip-flopped in Major League Soccer, so usually we see a little more movement in the winter. But that summer window is when you bring in. I'm waiting for it. Go ahead.
I would say, yeah, but at the same time, those are your big like DP, like Blaise Matuidi, the Higuain. Those are big signing. The Galaxy didn't have room to bring in someone like that for the summer.
Correct.
Yeah, but still.
Correct. No. Yeah, but still. If you go to the defense, by the way, offense. Let's see. I did the projections, right, of 34 games. I need to project the goals that the Galaxy are giving up and scoring through 34 games, because otherwise we can't really connect it to the past years as easily or readily, because the Galaxy are going to play 22 games this year, which, by the way, it feels like there are more games this year than there have ever been any other year, and I'm like exhausted, but they're not even close whenever you look at it. So right now, the LA Galaxy are on pace in a 34-game season to give up 73.4 goals. I would like to point out that no time it would be a record. They gave up 67 in 2017. They gave up 62 in 2008, 64 in 2018. In 2019, it was 59. They're on pace to give up 74. So it would be a new record. On the flip side of that, as much as we can say, God, this defense sucks, the offense sucks too. And right now, the offensive goals projected to be scored by the LA Galaxy in a 34-game season is 42.9, so 43 goals. 43 goals is second lowest in Galaxy history. 35 in 2003. You have some 44 in 2002. Wow. 2005 is 44. 36 in 2009. By the way, a year that they went to MLS Cup. So if you want to stick that one in your with the strong defense. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. That year,
And
so that not as good as you think it is. I mean, yes, they are. They had a positive goal differential, which says something about them, right? But it was a
yes,
31. They gave up 31 and they scored 36, so they were +5 on the goal differential
yeah.
whenever you did it. So you're right. It was a little bit of a quieter LA Galaxy there. During 2010 and 2011, the LA Galaxy gave up 26 goals and 28 goals, by the way, just in case you wanted to put the 74 into context of where they are. So
Wow.
anyway, no, there's lots of things that need to be fixed. Let's continue on with Dennis Kloese here.
First of all, that it is very challenging to find the right moment, and out of respect and circumstances and everything that we're going through, our intent was to support and to surround Guillermo with the best possible tools for him to perform, and I must say that how we ended up this year after our first year ending up in the playoffs, winning our game in the playoffs, obviously with a great individual performance of certain players, and one of them obviously Zlatan. The idea and the goals of the organization and of the club were to capitalize on that this year with younger players that had a little bit more experience, with more players according to the likes and the style of Guillermo. And as you've seen, and we've started off the beginning of the year very rough in Houston with a difficult game, but still get a result. Then it was a disappointing game at home, and then like everybody knows, and there's no even being close to an excuse. The pandemic hit, and then we've been up and down as a roller coaster.
Yeah, so talking about the right time to fire Guillermo Barros Schelotto, and I know Larry Morgan not on Twitter was texting me and says, he looks tired. Dennis looks tired, and you could imagine that it hasn't been a great time to sort of look at this. But yeah, I mean, that was going to be my question. Damian Calhoun ended up asking that. One of my buddies who covers the LA Galaxy, Damian asked that question, and it was sort of like that was my question. Why now? I mean, you had a chance to do it after Orlando. You could have done it after Orlando. You lose lopsidedly to LAFC in that game. You could have easily said that was the time to pull it, but then there's a 4-game winning streak. That sort of gets put in there. And all of a sudden there's hope and belief. And it's so funny because I remember going back to that, pumping the brakes on this and saying, hey, hold on, let's wait to see what they really are, which is not, but it's not like I had a premonition of anything. It's not like I understood, really what was going on, but it was, you have to sit there and say, what are we actually seeing? And if you looked at the expected goals, remember the LA Galaxy were outscoring their expected goals? You were going to say that.
I'm going to drink just because I knew you looked at the XG and that's why you warned us. So keep going. Yeah, XG told us that those wins weren't as lopsided and they weren't maybe dominating victories. Like even though the scores on some of them looked like they were dominating, they weren't dominated victories. They made the most, limited goals expected, but they made it happen. It wasn't high percentage, but they made it work. So I'm going to drink for you bringing up XG again. Well done. As expected.
That's good. As expected. And by the way, somebody in the Discord also pointed out, I think it was Ramiro in the Discord, that at the same time, the teams that the Galaxy were playing against were underperforming on their XG. So like they had an XG of 2 and they only scored 1 goal, and the Galaxy had an XG of 1.5 and they scored 3 goals, right? And it's just like one of those weird things where you're like, okay, the Galaxy took low percentage shots, but they went in. I think Chris Tucker said for 4 games, Sebastian Lletget played like Christian Pulisic. And I was cracking up. I go, yeah, you're right. It's all good. It's all good. By the way, Irvin wants to know if you got another pumpkin latte.
No, I went much like the Galaxy's performance. I went much more bitter this time, so it wasn't feeling sweet for the night. Went a little darker.
I just went a little darker. All right, I understand. So anyway, so that's it. Let's keep rolling with Guillermo because this show's going to go on for 3 hours tonight if we don't.
Dennis.
Well, the difficulty is, and goes a little bit with the last question, is the timing or anything. And I don't think, first of all, there's a good time for something like this ever. I do think that the message is that this club takes high pride in their fans, what they expect from the team. We're very, very aware of the underperformance of this year so far, with a clear sense of responsibility. As I also stated last night in the halftime talk during our game, with too many games that obviously don't represent what the fans expect from us, and a sad day, to be honest, to end this relation, and hopefully we end up on a note that at least the upcoming games fans see pride and see the fighting spirit that as a minimum requirement should be in our team.
All right, we'll keep rolling through this. I want to get to one more. It's coming up soon. It was about Chicharito, and so if we make it to that one, we're going to go. So keep it rolling.
There's not been any decisions made on the coaching staff. That's where we're going to decide in the afternoon and speak to Dom and give him obviously support and authority on that. And yeah, that is basically basic.
No, there was go. So yeah,
I think at the moment with such a short time spent to turn things over, to even achieve something, play again on Sunday, I think he's close to the players group. The players really and truly respect him as a highly qualified manager in this league, and with full knowledge of the entire group and the authority to take his best decisions in the upcoming 3 games.
Just quickly, that was about Dennis was talking about the support basically that they were giving to Dominic Kinnear, and why they thought he was in. So that respect is, he thinks that the players respect Dom. All right, keep it rolling.
Well, I do think, like anybody in our organization, we're always under constant evaluation. There's no secret about anything, and if the results are not good, and then the results haven't been good or even close to being good, that's obviously of a worry. And I want to be very respectful to a highly recognized manager as Guillermo, who had great results at both Lanús in Argentina and great results at Boca Juniors, which is an enormous club in Argentina. And as a former player, having reached the highest possible in this league. So I think the think process and the time has been obviously to give us much support and has give us much opportunities as possible. But at some point it is difficult, and it sounds as a cliche, but then the results obviously are part of an evaluation.
All right, and we'll keep rolling. I know Chicharito's up here soon. It's important.
Well, I think Javier, obviously, in this year, with all the excitement at the beginning of the year, both from his side, from our side, and from everybody responsible within this club, we haven't been able to connect him to his full potential. Now, obviously, with the challenges that we've gone through the entire year, it made it a very challenging year. His personal challenges obviously didn't help at all, and now we ended up in a situation that we have to go forward, and we have to look forward also in first of all, representing the club in our best way possible, including Javier, and any decisions and anything that goes forward, I think in its time we'll assess it in the right way.
All right, so let's separate this right here, because we're going to end it with that one, because that was the important one. They asked him about Chicharito and if he saw him on the team next year. Eric, if you're going to answer that question, the first and you're going to be definitive about it, right? The first thing you say is yes, of course. If you ask me that question, I know Chicharito's going to be here. I'm going to say yes, of course. And he did not say yes, of course, during any of that.
That's where you and I texted each other immediately after this question, and I know that's why you were rolling the clips until we got there. But you're right. Dennis, with how professional he is and always says all the right things, you just kind of, you almost get a feel, exactly what he's going to say, and be a pro and say the right things. So when you get a question that says, are there plans to have Javier Chicharito Hernandez on this team next year? I'm just in my head already playing Dennis saying, Oh, absolutely. He's absolutely going to be with his team. We have big plans for him. We want him, that was the answer I was expecting. So to hear him, say we're going to assess it and that, he hasn't been reaching his full potential, it was honest and I appreciate that, but it was not what I was expecting.
Yeah, it was not what I was expecting either. It's just interesting. And by the way, a lot of people held on to this line, which is, haven't been able to connect him to his full potential. I think that was the one that got tweeted out more than anything. And my tweet was, He didn't say that. Now, it seems that in Spanish, he was a little more definitive in that, because I've seen some translations of that, and he talked Chicharito up a lot more, I think, in Spanish, and it feels like he's leaning more towards just saying yes, like whenever we were talking last time. But he talks about his personal challenges as well. I'm like, is that his injuries? Is that it? Like, there's so many shades of gray. Goals. Yeah, it's the goals. Yeah,
being unable to score.
You think that's his personal challenge? I think that's a playing challenge. I think his personal challenge is his attitude, if you want to make it that. His injuries are a personal challenge, right? Like, if you want to make it that.
Maybe he knows some off-field things that are happening with him that maybe are affecting his life.
I don't know how
close TTK and him are.
Yeah, maybe Dennis is follows him on Twitch. Maybe that's what it is. By the way, somebody coined the term Twitcherito, and it's not okay. That's not something you should be using to bully him, but it's funny, and I can appreciate funny.
Let's have this conversation, because I think I've had this conversation basically every text thread that I'm on. But with Twitch and with Instagram and all these things, it shouldn't matter. None of that should matter when things are going right on the field. But when things are going wrong on the field, that's where it becomes bad. It's bad optics, and that's where you have to say something. So Chicharito being on Twitch in of itself should not be a problem. He should be able to play Twitch every night if he wants to. He should be able to stream every night if he wants to. But when you're not scoring goals and there's rumors about your injury and there's rumors about you not being a good teammate, it's just not the best thing to be promoting that when the on the field isn't working. Someone also pointed out Zlatan streamed playing Fortnite when he was here, but Zlatan was setting records for scoring the most goals in LA Galaxy season. So he could have Twitched at my house while I was trying to eat dinner and sleep, and I would have been okay with it, with all the goals he was bringing. So you get certain leeways when things are going a certain way on the field, and when it's not, it's fair to try to call those things out, because when it affects your on-the-job performance, that's where you ask questions. You and I, we have day jobs, and we podcast at night. If it affected our job, then we'd have to take a look in the mirror and say, okay, maybe what we're doing is having a negative impact. You're going to stay real quiet about that one, and I'm going to say
let's
stay quiet about that as well.
Yeah. Let's not to that point, if it got to specific thing.
We haven't done enough to be fired just yet. That's my point. Is at a certain point you have to say, let me pull back and look at my priorities, because if the thing that's bringing my paycheck and making my living isn't working, then I need to make that my focus. And I think that's fair for fans to call out and say, yeah, we can let him play, but if fans are upset with the optics of it and they're not posting on Instagram, that's fair too. I think it's fair to call that out. It's all related.
Zlatan could have slapped a toddler for stepping on his shoe, and we've been like, yeah, but he scores goals. I mean, the dude scores goals, so whatever he wants to do in his off time, that's fine. And it's important to sort of look at that. So, I mean, that ends our day with Guillermo Barros Schelotto gone, his coaching staff gone. Those guys, apparently Schelotto still owed $1 million. Now, somebody said, hey, you should get rid of Chicharito and not fire GBS. And I said, well, that's a money decision whenever you think about it, because if you get rid of Chicharito and you write that contract off right now, you paid him $5 million-ish. Again, I think it's less because of COVID, but $5 million-ish this year in salary. You paid $10 million roughly in transfer fee. He has $5 million plus $5 million left, $5 million a year plus bonuses. He's not going to get the bonuses. So you owe him $10+ million still. That's a tough check to write. Now, I'll say this. They did it with Giovanni Dos Santos, right? And they wrote off the last whatever $5 million, $6 million, no, $4 million, $3 million, something like that.
But it was also after 3 years or 2 full seasons with the team, and he had kind of worn out his welcome at that point. Chicharito, COVID season, shortened season, things haven't gone well, but I don't think depending on who you ask, I don't think he's worn out his welcome completely yet, and I think that's why you can't write that check. And it'd be more than what they paid Giovanni to get rid of him. But you're right. It's easier to get rid of the $1 million problem than the $10+ million problem.
$10+ million problem. Well, and here's the thing I was going to bring up about Giovanni Dos Santos is when you got rid of Giovanni Dos Santos, yes, you took the write-off. You also sold him eventually to America, right? Where he's playing. And because of that, you got money back. So how much did they actually lose on that deal? It wasn't as much as the full contract.
And the other important part of that is it opened up a DP slot so you can keep Zlatan. So don't forget that you were able to sign Zlatan for $1.5 million. And so if you look at that where you say, you cheat and you say that $6 million was back dues for the Zlatan season previously, then it's $7.5 million. And then I believe and another $7 million the season after that. It's all relative and it kind of works itself out.
It's an interesting little conundrum that everything gets put into. The LA Galaxy now have a game against Real Salt Lake coming up on Sunday. So we'll get you there. And yeah, I know I'm going to be there and everything. It's probably going to be my last home game of this season. Unless the Galaxy somehow scratch their way into playoffs, which is not happening. They have to win all 3 games, and then they need help after that in order to do it. So it's no longer within their hands, just to give you an idea of where it was. Quick update. We talked about the Galaxy not paying for Christian Pavon. I want to add that it seems unlikely that that's going to happen. We knew that. We talked about that on Monday. But Kloese is still leaving the door open for signing Christian Pavon. He's still saying, maybe we can negotiate because that $20 million was pre-COVID, and I'm not paying COVID price. I'm not paying pre-COVID prices during COVID. It's like a sale price type of thing. The sale's on now. I'm not going to pay for it because earlier. So that's Klose's stance on this is that listen. I still think there's like less than 10% chance whenever you really look at it, and with Guillermo Barros Schelotto gone, maybe even less of a reason for Christian Pavon to stay, Eric.
Yeah, and if you read Instagram posts, then that's the thing. Like I do. Pavon posted immediately like a post of him looking pensively off into the distance. 5 minutes after Guillermo's firing was announced. So read into that what you will. But I think Dennis's comments, I read him a little bit differently. He just mentioned how he's a talented player and that the season's not over yet. He still has time to play with it. There's 3 games left. He's not going to say we're waving goodbye to Pavon. He's still going to say the right thing. And say, we're going to explore options. But I think it's a done deal. They've already let Boca know they're not paying the $20 million. I don't know how much time they have to negotiate, especially with rumors coming out that Boca can make him eligible once he comes back because it's technically a loan deal. It sounds like those things are more in the works than a contract negotiation with the Galaxy.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So we'll see how that all goes in onto however that ends up. Oh, it's been a long day. Let's see. MLS announced
points
today.
Per game.
Yeah, points per game. I was going to say MLS announced today that the overall standings, read Supporter Shield, but that the overall standings in the league will be determined by points per game. That's on both sides of the conferences. The Eastern Conference is on pace to play all their games. The Western Conference, because of Colorado, is not. We said the LA Galaxy will not be replaying their game or making up that game against Colorado, so they're going to finish with 22 games, not 23. Colorado, I think, is short 5 or 4 games in this. So, they're going to finish with 19 or 18 games. And right now they sit above the LA Galaxy and they sit in a playoff position with their points per game, which I already argued a whole bunch about as well. So if you look at the standings right now, the LA Galaxy still at the bottom of the list in 12th. I made a joke on our Discord. I said, see, with points per game, the LA Galaxy actually stayed in the exact same spot. They're still in last. But 0.95 brings them a little bit closer to Houston. And it's not that far off. I don't know how it works. Having one less game for points per game means that each win counts for more than somebody who had played 23 games, which isn't exactly fair, but it's a higher percentage point whenever you look at it. So the chances of the LA Galaxy jumping into a points per game playoff spot may be a little different than if it's just straight points. I haven't done the math on it yet, but it seems likely
I just
that
did the
it's
math.
What is it?
So if they win their next 3 games, it'll put them at 1.227 points per game. And so I noticed some people pointing out, well, that's not enough to jump Colorado, but you have to remember if Colorado loses, their points per game percentage drops. So that's why they need help from others. So winning as things stand, if Colorado gets COVID cases and they don't play any more games, the Galaxy can win out and they still won't jump Colorado and they won't be able to claim a playoff spot. But if Colorado loses, and obviously RSL and Vancouver are teams they play, so they'd win and knock down those point percentages. So best possible points per game percentage for the Galaxy, 1.22, which could get them in that 8th spot given that Colorado loses a few games.
And you'd have to make sure that Vancouver didn't jump up there and Real Salt Lake didn't jump up there. You get to play two of those.
They play
teams,
them.
so
yeah,
they will have played them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't get those points, but yeah,
no.
I understand what you're saying. I got it. Math, it's hard, especially at this. By the way, Joe was asking in the chat room if you're drinking decaf, and if not, how do you sleep at night? And I think it's cute that you guys think that like I sleep at night after this. Come on, I'm up till like 11:30, 12:30 on recording nights for sure. And that was when it was at 7, and now we do it at 8, and I'm really awake. So anyway, so that's where it stands. The one thing on the supporter shield side of things is that the LA Galaxy stay above the bottom 2 spots. So they actually jump above, I think, Atlanta United, who has 1 more point than them, but the LA Galaxy on points per game are at 0.95. So the Galaxy in 24th place and not 25th place whenever you go points per game. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about MLS is that they announced the end of season award nominees, which is hysterical that there are any LA Galaxy players on any of these, except that Julian Araujo is now nominated for 3 MLS awards. He's nominated for Young Player of the Year award. He won't win that. He's nominated for Defender of the Year award. He won't win that. But he is nominated for Humanitarian of the Year award, and that's the best chance the LA Galaxy have of winning an award is Julian Araujo and his work with the farm workers up in Lompoc. So we'll see if that comes through. Christian Pavon nominated for the Landon Donovan MLS MVP award. He won't win that. Emiliano Insua was nominated for 2 Defender of the Year award. He won't win that. And MLS Newcomer of the Year award. He won't win that. And then Efrain Alvarez was nominated as Young Player of the Year award, and he won't win that. So those were the awards. I wanted to point out that teams nominate these people. That's why you see some of these.
That's what I suspected. That's what I suspected, because there are some people saying, what stats are they looking at? But I think each team needs to submit a list to say, this is who we're putting forward. And that's why you're totally right to say they're not going to win it. I think, you could look at the team has their own yearly awards. And I think, Araujo is a lock for humanitarian of the year for the Galaxy. And then possibly Defender of the Year. He's a lock in there. Pavon's going to be the Galaxy's MVP. So that tells you who's going to be the Galaxy award winners. But given how you're not going to give the last place team an MVP award or best young player. Efrain, I don't think even has enough minutes. I don't know how that works out. But yeah, enjoy it.
Marketing.
Enjoy the nomination. It's just happy to be here.
I'm just happy to be here.
It's an honor to be nominated.
Some of these lists, like the MVP award, there's 50 players on that list. All right, so it's nothing special. And I think Pavon is probably in the top 50, like the top 25 of those 50. But at one point, I considered him MVP. Easily an MVP contender. But that was during the 4-game winning streak. Then everything fell apart. So never mind. Yep, that was it. So that's where it goes. The LA Galaxy have, again, 3 games left. Sunday, November 1st against Real Salt Lake. Then you have home against Seattle midweek, Wednesday, November 4th. 8 p.m. kickoff time. That is a nationally televised game now. So make sure you get that one. That one will be on Unamas and TUDN USA, and of course Twitter, so you can watch it on Twitter. And then Sunday, November 8th, they wrap it up, and that is Decision Day. MLS announced no games after Decision Day. Everything ends on November 8th, and they're done. The LA Galaxy go away to what did you call Portland whenever you're playing Vancouver? Port Coover. That's right, Port Coover.
Port Coover, yeah.
Yeah, Port Coover will be where the LA Galaxy will head to play the Vancouver Whitecaps in Portland on the turf there. So that's what you have. Let's wrap the show up now with just a little preview of what's going to happen with RSL. Eric, this game is an interesting one. It is a Time Warner. So I'm getting old. Spectrum Sportsnet. Yeah, Spectrum Sportsnet game. It kicks off at 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. And so it's going to be one of the last times the LA Galaxy get a home game on the weekend, and one of your last games, I think, on Spectrum. Although probably the Port Coover game is also on Spectrum as I'm looking at the schedule as well. So the LA Galaxy wrapping this up. RSL currently sits in 10th spot whenever you go by the points per game that they're going with. They sit about 3 points above the LA Galaxy right now. They're at 1.1 points per game. The LA Galaxy at 0.95 points per game. So if you're talking about a game the LA Galaxy should win, this is probably one of those games. Real Salt Lake on the road, 1-4-3, only one win all year on the road for this Real Salt Lake team that has struggled. A minus 17 goal differential. They have scored the same amount of goals as the LA Galaxy, but they've given up 10 less. So in terms of equality, this is a team that very much feels the equal of the LA Galaxy, and you'd hope maybe that the home advantage there, Eric, would lift them through.
Yeah, I think if you look at 538, they're still giving, even though the Galaxy are in last place, they're still giving them the advantage. They have a 47% chance to win. RSL with a 28% chance to win, and then a 25% quarter of a chance to draw there. But you're right. With RSL, this is a very winnable game for the Galaxy, especially when you look at the teams that have traveled to the Galaxy. It's Portland, San Jose, Seattle, LAFC. Those trips aren't that long. From Salt Lake, that's a longer road trip, so you have to capitalize on the team that's probably going to be a little bit more fatigued from the trip than maybe some of the other teams you've played earlier in this season, like a San Jose, it's not going to bother them as much to travel as it would RSL. So you have to take advantage. It's Dom Kinnear's chance to show what he can do and make some changes, and the team's chance to show that they're not dead yet. They're not quite dead yet.
I have a bunch of Galaxy friends who were let's see, one of them was traveling back from the World Series. I didn't even get to say congratulations to the Dodgers on the World Series. LA once again the sports center of the world. Really, I'm going to say it. They're the sports center of the world. The Lakers and the Dodgers.
We've had this conversation.
We have. The Lakers and the Dodgers both holding championships right now. Really, it's up to the Galaxy to make it in the playoffs and then run the table and get an MLS Cup. And if that happens, how do you not make Dominic Kinnear your coach next year? I think that's the way that Dom has to do it, is get a third MLS Cup. So that way I can rant and rave about how much it counts now that the LA Galaxy came from last place. Whereas if anybody else wins it, I will rant and rave about how it shouldn't count, how a supporter shield is ridiculous, and everything else that I usually rant and rave about. So I think that's sort of the plan that Dom needs to set it up. They should say, hey, Dom, if you win MLS Cup, we'll give you the job. No problems. I mean, I like that. Stick and carrot. Let's go. Let's rock and roll on that.
Sure, Josh.
All right.
Sure.
Is there anything else you wanted to cover tonight? I know we went a little longer. We needed to go longer. There was a lot that happened today.
Yeah, well, I did want to mention possible coaching candidates with possibly like a Miguel Herrera, but that's for another show. DTK said it was too soon to start talking about candidates, so I'm not going to talk about candidates, even though I just dropped one out there.
Listen to the guy who we blame for a lot of the problems, but somehow still respect enough to allow him to dictate what goes on our show. Right? That's what we just did. I'm as confused. 20 minutes of his clips. I'm as confused as you, Eric. It's like, you kiss your first girl and then you go cry in the corner. I'm not sure how to feel right now. Not sure.
That's not how it works. That's not how it's supposed to go.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Well, we'll figure it. We'll I'll get some therapy. We'll figure this out. But again, I think the LA Galaxy are in a worse position now than they were with Guillermo Barros Schelotto, only because there's so many options and things that can go wrong. And trying to pick that out, MLS has turned into a league with very little margin for screw-ups, as you've seen with the LA Galaxy. And you have to get everything right, and you have to get your designated players right. And with Chicharito hanging out there right now, it may be that the Galaxy aren't going to be able to get their designated players right for another 2 years. So think about that for a second. Now, Christian Pavon goes this winter as expected, and the LA Galaxy have a designated player spot. Depending on who the coach is, again, the reason that you like Dennis Kloese with Guillermo Barros Schelotto is because they were coming in with a plan, Eric. There was a plan, right? And I think that's one of the reasons that everybody still trusts Dennis Kloese is he still has a plan in his mind of how he wants to work this and how he wants to do it. And we've seen a complete absence of plan from anybody else within the organization, which sort of goes back, and I know we haven't talked about it, but I said that the Guillermo Barros Schelotto thing was a start of something. You've had a president of the LA Galaxy who's gone through 4 coaches. You have, a president of AEG who has buried 2 sports franchises, in the Kings and the Galaxy. So in my mind, the accountability is not done yet. And when you know that Uncle Phil, that Phil Anschutz was at the game that I was at. Which game was that? Oh, it was the Vancouver game. Was at that Vancouver game where the LA Galaxy won it. You know that Phil's involved in this, and I didn't see him, but I think Taylor Twellman reported that. So you need to have a plan going forward, and the organization as a whole needs to have a plan going forward. And absence of that plan, we're willing to trust Dennis Kloese, who says he has a plan, and his plan just burned into little pieces and broke apart, and now he has to start back over. But there's somebody who's promising us a plan. If there's no plan anywhere else within the organization, which sometimes I feel it's a rudderless ship, then you have to find somebody who's going to helm the ship correctly and drive it in the right direction. Bruce Arena did that. Again, praying at the altar of Bruce Arena. Bruce Arena did that. He always had a plan. He always had a direction. Everybody in that organization was aligned and pulling on the rope in the same direction. And you can't always say that with this administration the way it has been. So I think the LA Galaxy have a lot of questions. Dennis Kloese said he had to, look in and see if he was, he was the responsible party. He was responsible for this as well. So that had to be looked in the offseason as well. So why don't you can have the final thought, and then we'll roll.
I like this. Jerry Springer's final thoughts. Pull up a chair, kids. I think you mentioned it. GBS is the first domino to fall. I think he is not the sole responsibility. I think other changes need to be made. The way Dennis Kloese is talking sounds like he knows what direction this may be going. And he maybe knows what the plan is, and maybe there are other people who are not going to be part of those plans moving forward. I'm just going to say it out loud. With Chris Klein being president for this entire tenure that the Galaxy have gone on this drought and had unsuccessful seasons, that comes from the top, putting the pieces in play. I think this was his ninth life as a Cat. He's had a lot of opportunities, a lot of coaches. I think a change needs to be made there. And that's why I think DTK is even on the chopping block a little bit as well, because why would you keep your general manager if you're going to bring in a new president and new person to make things happen? So it's possible that GBS is just the first domino because of the on-the-field performance, but maybe there are more things to come. And I think the Galaxy fan base that is on there sees through that, and they know that it's not all on the coach, and that other changes need to happen, and there needs to be a reboot and a reset, just like there was in 2007 with cleaning house and firing everyone and getting someone in to steer the ship in the right direction. I think that's what the Galaxy needs right now. And with 3 games left, something needed to be done with the embarrassing losses. But I think you're right. We're not done yet. There's still going to be an off season, and there are going to be other things that need to happen if this team doesn't want to be in limbo for another 4 or 5 years.
All right, there you go. LA Galaxy playing against Real Salt Lake coming up on Sunday. Sunday, November 1st, 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. Spectrum Sportsnet is your channel. Head on over to our Discord. I imagine that you can usually find a way to watch the game on the Discord. That's just hint. Go to the Discord, watch a game. And the link for the Discord is always in the show notes as well. I've stopped caring. We know that. I would like to say it sounds like I know Megan Riza, who works for Spectrum, was one of the evacuees for the fire in the Silverado area. She's doing fine, it sounds like, but I just wanted to wish her and her family the best. I know that she got out of there, and I think everybody got back in, so I don't think there were any issues, and they didn't lose any structures in that fire. It was pretty close. It's like about 8 miles from where I'm at, so it was pretty close. It wasn't close enough for me to be worried about it, but at the same time, I knew people who were in that area. So, but everybody stay safe. I know there's fires out there. Santa Ana winds. We got COVID-19 spiking again. So, wash your hands, stay safe, all that fun stuff again. And then obviously, go vote. We've talked about it before. Please vote. It was, I think Dave Matthews was on CNN today. So, you always look for your political commentary to come from the same guy who wrote Crash Into Me, right? Crash. But he was saying, when you don't vote, you can allow the minority to decide what the majority of the people will have to live through. And he goes, and if you really don't vote, you can have an extreme minority decide what the majority of people go through. So if you're the majority and you have a voice, you need to go out there and you need to vote. So that way the majority decides what the majority is going to go through. So like I said, man,
and just
Dave Matthews.
Fun little story that I've always, when you see people, posting, go vote, and maybe you get sick of it, maybe you're fatigued. You just remember those people voted. So if you agree with them, back them up, give them a second vote to ride on their coattails. And if you disagree with them, go cancel them out. So either way, there's an incentive for you to go do that. So whatever way you're going, you have a reason, and you see what's going on in our world to make those things. So either back up your fellow friends who are already voting. I know I turned in my mail-in ballot, so find that drop box. USPS, maybe not the best, most reliable way right now. So find that drop box in your local area and drop it off early. That way you can avoid those lines with the COVID spike. So I agree with you. Go vote.
Go vote. All right, that's it. Eric, tell people where they can find you. We'll get out of here.
All right. As always, you can find me on Twitter at HammerEV. You can also find me on Instagram at Galaxy Profile. That's Galaxy PROFOUL.
All right, if you're looking for me on Twitter, it's at JGuesman, JGUESMAN, and of course at Galaxy Podcast. Head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com where you can find all of our articles, our previews, all that fun stuff is right there for you at cornerofthegalaxy.com. All full coverage of Guillermo Barros Schelotto and his firing, and of course all the games coming up here, cornerofthegalaxy.com. All right, that's it. Long show today. Glad everybody could join us. We will keep you updated for the rest of the season and keep going. For Eric, the Portuguese Hammer Vieira, I'm Josh Pato Guesman. You've been listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Be safe, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening, and we ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.